Good morning, friends. I'm your host, Tejaswini. Today we have a wondrous person, an engineer turned teacher, and he's a teacher for all. Parents, children, students, all the professionals, everybody are his disciples and learn simple natural laws and science from his toy-making shows and at times reproduce them to educate others. For many, Dr. Gupta is very well known, and some of you may be wondering who he is, but I'm sure by the end of this show, you will recognize him as the toy maker and a teacher who teaches his students through practical or by using toys as his tools for educating. Good morning, sir. Hearty welcome to NRI Samay, and I'm a big fan of yours since childhood. I'm also the one among those who had enjoyed watching your short films in Doordarshan Teleschool, and it's a great pleasure for me to talk with you now on NRI Samay. So, sir, how do you like to be addressed? You like to be addressed as a teacher or as a toy maker?
I mean, largely as a toy maker. My identity is more of a toy maker. I am not by training, not a teacher, but an engineer. But in the late 70s, I was involved with a village science teaching program, and which inspired me to look at toys more critically, trying to use throwaway materials which are available in the environment, very, very ordinary materials like newspapers, bicycle tubes, old pens, refills, and we use all of that stuff to make lots of very interesting toys. And most of these toys, they illustrate some principle of science. So that is the important thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you said, like toys are teach science. What is science? Why learning of science is so important in nowadays? I know it is a very basic question, but I would like to start my show with this question.
No, I think because for no other reason, because science is an extremely interesting subject. It's deeply absorbing. So this is, and it helps us to understand the world around us. Philosophers can make theories which are untested, but science actually tries to test them out. You can come up with any zany theory, but science would want evidence. They would want proofs. So to understand the real world, we need to engage with science. There is no other way. There is no other discipline.
Yeah.
Philosophers and other disciplines can make conjectures about the world. But if you really want to understand the nitty-gritties, how the world works, you need to engage with science. So that makes science a very fascinating and an interesting discipline.
Yeah, exactly. It's as you said, it is very essential to lead a constructive and thought-provoking life, and it's very essential, and it has become very essential also. So where did you learn to make toys? And we'll go to the beginning. Grassroots of. Okay, go ahead, sir.
See, one was that. In 1970s, in the early 70s, there were some scientists, Indian scientists, who had done good in the U.S., who returned back to India. One of them was Dr. Anil Sadgopal. He did a PhD from Caltech. He was a molecular biologist, and he worked in a cutting-edge research institute, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. But the 70s were very different times. There was a kind of political turmoil the world over. People were trying to search for a meaningful role for themselves. And when he was about 31 years old, he left his job to start a kind of a non-government organization in Madhya Pradesh, which is the central part of India. And he went there and he found that most of the children in the schools, they had no science laboratories. All science was learned by rote. Children mugged up definitions. And, they did no hands-on activities. And he said this is it's a very mutilating way of learning science. So they gave a proposal to the Madhya Pradesh government that for 5 years they would work on creating a curriculum which would use local materials, local skills, whatever was low cost. And some excellent people participated in this. One of my teachers in IIT Kanpur, Professor D. Balasubramaniam, he would spend his summer vacations in Kishore Bharti, this NGO, trying to devise experiments in chemistry. So I had heard him in 1972 when he was at IIT Kanpur. And in 1978, I took a year off from my job to work as a volunteer in this. It's called as the Hoshangabad Science Teaching Program. And it was a very, very fascinating period for me. The first few months I devised many, many simple teaching aids, and which made me very happy. I used to work in a plant in Pune manufacturing trucks, but I thought this was much more wonderful than making trucks, designing things for children and then putting them into little books, etc., etc. This is how it all started.
That's you are more fascinated towards toys than your designs, your truck designs as a engineer. Is that right?
Yes. See, I'm a tinkerer by heart. I love to do things with my hands. And working with children was, much more fascinating than, sitting in a design office and designing small components for the truck.
So can you share us, when you have worked as a volunteer in the Hoshangabad Science Teaching Program in 1970s, what was your first experience with the kids in the program or in that NGO schools?
Yes. See, the schools were very, very poor at that time, some 40 years back and 35 years back to be exact. Many schools had no science laboratories. Everything was learned by rote. And the immense amount of poverty, if it rained outside, there would be more water inside the school than outside because the roof leaked. And children would bring a gunny bag, an old cement bag, to sit on the wet earth. So this was the extent of poverty there. So one could not think of very fancy things. And I recall one of the experiences in 1978, there was a small kind of a bazaar, a weekly bazaar, where people spread all their wares on the roadside. So I went there and I bought one specimen of every trinket. There would be some bangles, small mirrors, etc., etc. And when I was getting my bicycle inflated, I saw this black cycle valve tube hanging. A small piece of this is put in the cycle valve where they actually pump in air. And I'm just fascinated with materials, and that fascinated me. So I just bought 10 feet of this. And then within a month, using matchsticks as basic elements and these cycle rubber tubes as the joints, I made a kind of designed a very simple mechano. Children could make 2D shapes, 3D shapes with them. They could make houses. They could make, and that was, make a joint of 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, and do fascinating things. And all we just needed was matchsticks and cycle valve tube, both available in the village. And this hit me very deeply. It was that this is so much more interesting. It would help so many more children than making trucks in a factory.
Mm-hmm. So since 30 years, you are into this tinkering and teaching children with your toys. So did you find any kind of development in the availability that children have in the schools?
Well, I think there has been a sea change in education in India in the last 30 years. Earlier it was chalk and talk, or just giving lectures and children, were taking notes and spitting them out in the exams. But this has gradually changed for the better. The project work, children working on small projects, hands-on, learning by doing. Now, these are the buzzwords today. So there has been a change in this attitude. And there are many, and India is a huge country, and there are many people who are looking for alternatives, very low cost, which are relevant to them for learning science. And therefore, my first book, for instance, it came out in 1985. It was written in my mother tongue, later translated into English, called as Matchstick Models and Other Science Experiments. And this book got translated into 12 Indian languages by various popular science groups and probably sold more than 500,000 copies, which is quite a bit for a popular science book. It's not a textbook, which is compulsory for a child to buy. But because of their own volition, if 500,000 copies of a book have been bought, which means it's a popular book.
Yeah, we'll come to this books point later part of our interview. But for now, yes. I would like to ask you, this is toy making or the tinkering. Anything is not an easy job. It's maybe it is easy for those really interested, but it is obviously it's a very creative and job with which needs lots of endurance. So, are you fascinated by toy making from your childhood, or is it from the 1970s only when you have joined this NGO?
No, much. I think you're very right. But I've been a tinkerer as a child. Trying to pick up things from the roadside, trying to repair other people's broken toys. I came from a rather poor family. My parents never went to school. But my mother understood the value of education, so she sent all my three brothers and sisters to the best school available in my hometown. But this fascination of doing things, making things, has been there with me since childhood. And I always tell people that I have the most fascinating job on earth. Play the whole day and get paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, are your parents educated? You said you are from a poor background, but are they educated?
My parents never went to school. I was privileged to go to a convent school in my hometown. My mother sold some of her jewelry so that all of us could go to the best school. And it's fascinating that parents who had never been to school, my eldest brother, he's a pediatrician, he's a doctor. The second one is several patents to his credit. My sister did the MSc in physics, and I went to IIT Kanpur. And I think this is one of the greatest investments a mother made in her children.
Yeah, it's as Swami Vivekananda has said, educated mom is very responsible, and I mean they can educate. They take the responsibility to educate their children who build future nation. And I'm sure your mom has done her job excellently because
yes,
all her
absolutely.
children you are into.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I think one of the deepest, most enduring influences in my life was my mother, because she had to struggle to educate us, and so we thought that we must do something very meaningful in our lives.
Okay, so as we are into education, can you share a little more about your and how you used to be in those days? I mean, in your childhood, you are a tinkerer and a thinker who used to collect articles and make things with his own imagination. So, which is also an application-oriented thing, which undoubtedly has pulled you into engineering. But how was your life in the IITs?
Well, I did. I come from a very small town. It's called as Bareilly in the state of Uttar Pradesh. It's a Hindi-speaking area. But luckily, I went to a convent school, so the medium of education was English. So I learned English in school. I did fairly good in the entrance exam of the IIT. I was all India. Rank was 218 to 218. And in the North Zone, which is IIT Kanpur, I was number 28 in the merit list. And when my father took me to IIT, he didn't know which branch should I opt for, because we had no exposure. My father didn't. So that's the time I said that I must take over. So there's a kind of a counseling where the students are called in by the management according to their rank. And the ones ahead of me, all 27 ahead of me, took electrical engineering. That's how I landed up doing electrical engineering in IIT Kanpur. Because I was particularly fond of this subject. Mm-hmm. But I think IIT Kanpur, it was set up by a consortium of 9 American universities, including the MIT. And we had a number of very good teachers from the United States, and much of the faculty in IIT Kanpur were trained in the U.S. So we had some of the best teachers on earth, and an extremely competent peer group. So IIT gave me a hell of a lot. I came from a small town. It opened up a new world for me. There was a world-class library which would open from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night. There was a gliding center. There was a computer center. One could pursue any passion or hobby, and that's what a good institute does. And this is what IIT Kanpur did to me. I found my peer group, my classmates, much cleverer than I was, and I learned a great deal from them. I think so. But also, one could see the contradictions at that time. In IIT Kanpur, there was a Kendriya Vidyalaya, the central school, also a campus school. But the children of the mess servants, the security guards, they would not get admission in these schools. So some of our seniors started something called as the Opportunity School, meant for the children of the disadvantaged. And for 5 years, I went and taught in that school. We would bunk a day, take some leave, and teach in that school. And these were the first inputs when I was a 17-year-old to teach as a volunteer children of very poor parents. And this was a very fascinating experience for me.
Yeah, it's undoubtedly for any bachelor's degree holder, undergrad years must be very dedicating for them. But on the take of IITs, I would like to ask you, you did your engineering in 30 years back, and people say, even the alumni say there is a lot of difference in IITs from what it is. It was in 1970s and 60s to what it is at present. So, did you make any such kind of difference in the present IITs or the IIT students or anything like that?
I think one of the most remarkable was that 40 years back, IIT was a 5-year course, and every semester, at least for the first 8 semesters, every student had to do a course in the social sciences. So I did a course in philosophy, I did a course in economics, I did a course in development and underdevelopment. And I think this is, otherwise a technical institute can make you very unidimensional. It just gives you one aspect, the technological aspect. But there are political aspects to every problem. There are economic aspects, there are social aspects, there are philosophical reasons. And I think the best thing which IIT gave me was a kind of a much bigger overview of things, looking at the human element, looking at the economic element, and so not just the technical thing. And what has happened now is that they made it a 4-year course, and many of these social science courses have been slashed at the altar of technology. And I think this is a rather saddening aspect of the current IITs, because it gives a much narrower outlook to students who pass out.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I leave the decision or the opinion to our listeners. But being an IIT alumni, you had a profound career undoubtedly a profound career as an electrical engineer. But is there any other deeper or profound influence that made you to come into this, that made you to leave your job as an electrical engineer and come into this toy making and NGOs and a much simpler life?
Well, I think, Tejaswini, one of the reasons is that I'm a product of my times. The late 60s, early 70s were very different times. There was a kind of political churning throughout the world. There was in America, if you look at it, there was the anti-Vietnam movement, there was the civil rights movement. In 1972, Rachel Carson had written a beautiful book called The Silent Spring, which ushered the environmental movement. There was the feminist movement. And even in India, we had the Jayaprakash Narayan movement, we had the Naxalbari movement. And whenever there is a political churning of society, it unleashes a lot of social energy. A lot of good people are thrown out. And this was very obvious within the national movement in India. At Gandhiji's call, many people who were in very high-paying jobs, very high degrees, they chucked their jobs to jump into the national movement. So we are also, as human beings, we are influenced by the political tides of our times, and we are influenced by them. So the defining slogan of the 70s was, go to the people, love them, live with them, start from what they know, build on what they have. And so many people of my generation, gave up careers and wanted to do something meaningful with their lives. Our lives are very short, and we must do something which is worthwhile, which we are passionate about. And I personally feel that I've been extremely lucky to be able to pursue what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as you are a devout follower of Gandhiji, isn't it?
Yes, very true.
Okay. So, can you tell us, what is the most fascinating element in Gandhiism for you?
No, for me, it's Gandhi gave us all a talisman. That whenever you are in doubt, look at the poorest person and see how your actions can alleviate his suffering, and then your doubts will disappear. And in our country, there are so many people who are deprived of education, of good food, of good housing, of many benefits, and who really live their lives on a margin. And so Gandhi's talisman, to me, is that there are many things in the world which I can't do, but there are a few things which I can do, and I can do them well, and I will try and do them. Now, this is Gandhi's mantra for me in my personal life. And what I feel is that the kind of terrain in our country, as far as education goes, is extremely barren. If even there was a good seed, a good child, that seed would wilt away because there is no soil to nurture it. And so, in terms of my day-to-day philosophy, is that we must every single day try and make a fistful of soil. Do something meaningful every day. Because unless there is soil, unless we create soil, we will never see a spring. We will never see flowers. So this is very important for me.
In simple terms, can you tell what is your motto in your life?
Well, my motto is true that there are millions of children in India who do not have access to good books. So this is what I try to do through my website. There are passionate books on education, on the environment, on science, on mathematics, great children's literature from across the world, in Hindi, in Marathi, in Telugu, in Kannada, whichever language I can get hold of. I scan them, digitize them, put them on my website, and every single day there are 10,000 books which are downloaded. Now this gives me very deep satisfaction. It makes me very, and all this is downloaded for free. Also, I'm being a tinkerer, I'm good at making things, and I have a small group, very small, very passionate and compassionate group. And we make science toys to make the learning of science fun for children. Today we have 3,300 films on YouTube on how to make science interesting, hands-on science. They illustrate a lot of principles of science, and they're called as toys from trash.
Yeah.
Every single day, there are 50,000 children across the world who view our films. And this makes us very happy too. I think this is a small delta role, a small role which we can play. We can't do too many big things, but this is what we can do and we will do.
Mm-hmm. So because we have come across, as I said earlier, friends, his website, Arvind Gupta's website, is a highly resourceful website, and once we enter his website, we see a very nice and very impressive, appealing quotation by Oxfam that, and somewhere there are engineers helping others fly faster than sound. But where are the engineers helping those who must live on the ground? So these are the opening lines which appeal anyone who visits his website, arvindguptatoys.com. So I think highly resourceful because we have 1 million books for 1 million people on his website. And as he said, there are really million books on his website for free for any person to read and enjoy and utilize them in any way possible for them. So, Dr. Gupta, how did you get the thought to make various other science books and storybooks available for public at no cost on your website?
See, one of the reasons is that the government of India, we are very good at assimilating computers. Even in remote areas, the government of India is putting computers in schools. So it might be a while before the village school gets an internet connection, but there is still a computer there. So the first thing which we did, we collated, this is about 5 years back, we collated a DVD, which can store about 4.3 GBs of data material. And we packed in one DVD, it's called as a learner's library, 220 short films, videos on toys from trash, 6,000 photographs of all our toys, which give a sequential way of making them. And third was 800 ebooks, very relevant to their context. We collated this DVD into 3 Indian languages. One was, of course, Marathi, because I'm based in Maharashtra, in Hindi, which is spoken by 400 million people, and in English, because English is the linked language in India. And we have shared this DVD for free with over 7,000 schools. It would be a while before they get the internet, but this is all collated. There's a very nice architecture in this DVD, which the schools can start using immediately. And the other is that if you can make books available in Marathi, in Hindi, in Kannada, in Telugu on a website, I think there is a very thumping response to such books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, undoubtedly, maybe I'm sure there are so many listeners and for your website and for your channel on YouTube because it's a very catchy one and everybody love to have toys and love to create toys for themselves. So, would you like to tell us more about the 1 million books for 1 billion people, which is on your website? And you have already said a lot, but if you would like to share a little more for our viewers, please.
Yes, I think Tejaswini, I think the digital dream, and this is a dream which has been dreamt by many visionaries. Gutenberg.org was one of them. This slogan, 1 million books for 1 billion people, is not my slogan. We have taken it from Gutenberg.org. It is their slogan. Because in a digital world today, all the books in the world in every language, whether you are a poor child in a poor country or a rich child in an affluent country, every book in every language can be digitized and made available to everyone for free. Now, this is old technology. This is pedestrian technology. This technology was almost a decade old. So these are the possibilities. Anything which comes in between this dream must get a boot. This is the only way to bridge the gap in the world. The internet is a great leveler. People in remote areas in India who have no access to books, if they get the internet, they would get the latest books. And the Genome Project only demonstrated that 99.999% of all humanity's genes are the same. So given a chance, our children in poor countries, in remote areas, they can do as well as anyone else in the world. So this is the dream. So to fulfill this dream, we try and put some of the best books on science, on education, on the environment, on peace, anti-war books. I hate wars because the wars, they disrupt life. They make life hell for ordinary people. And it's the ordinary people who die, not the rich in wars. So I hate wars. So I've got a very large collection of anti-war books on my website. Also, a lot of great children's books from across the world. Because if we can imbue children with the love of books and they become readers, I think we have done something substantial.
Yeah. So the Project Gutenberg, as you said, it is like which is more like spreading English literature, and the books are mainly like English literature or the novels in their website. And yeah, it is similar. Both of your projects are really very similar, except the fact that your website is more into science than into literature or any other entertainment, any other kind of entertainment books. So, and also your website does have your short films, which are translated into so many different, many different Indian languages. And maybe we can say your website is like Indian Project Gutenberg project. Your website is like that, maybe because.
Yes, so this is what we aim to do. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have any
so this
kind
is what
of?
we.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, this is what we're trying to aim at. Try to digitize books in various languages, and all these, dubbings of films in Telugu, in Tamil, in Kannada, has all been done by volunteers. And you'd be surprised, we have almost 200 films in Spanish. And this is courtesy of one very, very eminent person. Her name is Dr. Breezy Oceana. She came as a postdoc student in Pune, and she visited a small science center. And she comes from the Dominican Republic. And she was fascinated by the low-cost toys from trash, simple science experiments. And it hit her very deeply. And she says, this is what the children in Haiti or the Dominican Republic need. And she has dubbed 250 films into Spanish. And we realize there's a whole world of children who speak Spanish, and they've been seen a lot. Similarly, we have 40 films into Chinese. They've been dubbed by a lady. Her English name is Dora. And she's deep somewhere in China. Probably I'll never see her in this life. But she wrote to me, she had heard one of my TED Talks, and she said that these films would be very useful to Chinese children. So this is only because of volunteers. Unfortunately, there are a few Indian languages like Punjabi, like Odia, like Bangla, where we still have very few dubbed films. And we are always looking for volunteers who would dub our films into, maybe French or German. We have very few films in these languages. So
it's maintaining a website is undoubtedly it's a huge task, and maintaining a website which has 1 million books, which will have undoubtedly 1 billion hits, will be a huge task. So what kind of support are you getting from any kind of organizations, monetary support or material support or human support that you are getting, and who is the major fund? How is your website or this project is majorly funded from?
No, we work, Tejaswini, I'm part of a small institute. This institute, the name of the institute is the Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics. This was set up by India's most leading astrophysicist, Professor Jayan Narlikar. He's won the Padma Vibhushan. But 20 years back, he won the Kalinga Award, which is UNESCO's highest award for popular science. And this institute, it's a small institute. It offers a PhD in astronomy. But he started a small children's science center, where I work along with 3 other colleagues. And we are funded, we get a small amount of survival wage from the Tata Trust. But this website is completely mine. I pay for the web space, which eats up a lot into my salary. But I've got these 3 wonderful colleagues. It's a very small, focused, and a very passionate group. And the whole day. And all these films, you'd be surprised, they are made with a camera which costs just $200. So we cut down the hype about technology. We should have something worth saying and then use appropriate technology for our purpose. So we use very, very low-cost technology to generate. And today, over 15 million children have viewed our films in 18 languages. This is what we try. We want to expand the dubbing part so that there are more films in Punjabi, more films in Odia, more films in Bangla, and many other Indian languages. And we need volunteers for this.
Okay. So there is a question from one of our listeners. He had posted the question which is like this. A lot of people put books in their drawing rooms on the shelves, and they're just on the shelves. They stay there for a long time. So do you think the purpose of those books are better served on the shelves or in the hands of people reading? In other words, once the book is read, should one give it away? Is his question.
Well, it depends upon that. There are many good people who, after reading a book, they give it away. And the future of books is digital, because in a small hard drive, I can carry 100,000 books. In a small reading device, a Nook or a Kindle, if I put some additional memory, I can carry 10,000 books with me. So this is the future of books. So the future is not in just physical books, but in virtual books. We need to digitize. India is a country full of different languages. We have 22 official languages. And many of the books may be 30 years old. They're not being reprinted now. This is our heritage. We need to digitize these books and put them on the internet, because if there is a researcher, if there is a reader, we must make these books in the local languages accessible. Today we have the technology to do that.
So you were telling that you need volunteers for your project, and can you tell us how our listeners can be part of your project? Is there any way?
Well, for instance, I gave the example of Dora, who's in China. She has dubbed 40 of our films in Chinese, and I've never met her, and I'm unlikely to meet her in this life. But so there will be many listeners who could, there could be people who speak Punjabi at home, or who speak Bangla at home, or Odia at home, and they could be in the U.S., and they could dub our films and just send us the audio files by email. And we will synchronize their audio with the video and upload it on YouTube, and also acknowledge on the credits page the name of the person who has dubbed the film. We also need people who can dub our films in Spanish, in German, in French, in Italian. We have very few films, or Japanese. We have very few films in these languages. So we would highly appreciate if people, come to us as volunteers, and dub some of our films and send us the audios back. And we will do the rest and acknowledge them.
So listeners, there are opportunities for you to go and participate voluntarily in Dr. Gupta's toy making or the short film making project, and so those are open for you. Well, friends, we are with Dr. Gupta, and sir, can you are there any government or public initiatives to promote early childhood education in India, and something in the nature of PBS Kids or something like that, or previously government of India?
Yeah. Well, see, the government of India, it's a huge organization. The country is huge. The government takes many initiatives. And we are also a very vibrant democracy. And some of the government initiatives, despite well-meaning, they don't go down very well at the grassroots level. But India, fortunately, being a democracy, there are a lot of very passionate individuals, non-government organizations, small groups, which are doing very, very good work, trying to put their small energies, focusing them on a particular task. And many of them try to work with the most marginalized, the oppressed, the poor people. And these are very nice things. Many of the workshops which we hold in our center are for activists who work with street children, with slum children, with children of sex workers, very marginalized children. These activists come and we show them how to make science interesting, very playful, full of fun, and they try and do this in the various slums and bastis that they work in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're right now you are doing it to a very grassroots level and making science available for underprivileged. But there are also listeners and students from schools, like who go to convent schools, also who listen and who follow your channel quite frequently. But these days, surprisingly, since maybe from at least a decade, parents are just thinking about academics and ranks for their children and entrance exams like JEE entrance exams or getting into highly ranked institutions. So as a result, kids are are very much pressurized, and they are very much into education or studying all the time, and for relaxation they are just like watching TVs or hovering over internet. So, and also the schools are completely neglecting the playtime or the physical education training, which used to be a compulsory period for students in early 90s, but I don't see it anywhere at present. So, so are you taking any steps as part of your organization to avoid this kind of bad phenomenon, and or do you know any kind of preventive measures that have been taken for these kind of bad phenomenon, this kind of phenomenon?
So, Tejaswini, one is that we are very, very small. We are just 3 or 4 people, very passionate about our work, but and that's all we can do. As I said right in the beginning, there are many things which we are not able to do. We neither have the political support or the clout to do that. But a few things which we can. And one thing which we try and do is, there is this feeling in society that girls can't do science. There is a stereotype that girls can't do science. And this is patently stupid. And whenever there are girl students who come, especially from municipal schools, we open our doors and our hearts to them, spend much more time with them. And these girls excel. So these are small steps which we can take in our personal lives. Also make material available free. Now, if something is freely available, well, the people who make the most use of it are the rich, which happens, which is true. But also, much of our material is also used by many, many NGOs who work with poor children. And I think children as a whole, there was this great Polish pedagogue, his name was Janusz Koczarek, who said that children are the oldest proletariat in the world. They are the butt of the entire adult world. So, if we can do something meaningful for children, the poorest children in Africa, in Asia, in our own country, I think it is something very fascinating, something very interesting and very deeply satisfying.
Okay. Would you like to share about any of your students who at grassroots level used or were your student?
Well, I can give you 2 examples, very small examples. About 6 years back, we made something called as a magnetic levitation pencil. With 6 small ring magnets, you can make a pencil levitate. It's hanging in the air, and if you spin it, it keeps spinning for about 2 minutes because there's so little friction in there. And it costs very little money. And there is a girl, her name is Hamsa Padmanabhan, And she wrote she was in high school at that time, and she wrote a 10-page paper on this, how it works. And she won the Intel's second international award. She was lifted from Pune to Seattle, and she got $2,000 as an award. The American Association of Physics Teachers was so zapped by what this girl had done, they gave her another $2,500. And 5 years down the line, there is a minor planet which is named after Hamsa. The second is a very poor girl. She studies in a municipal school where we run a science club. Her name is Durga Jetty. She lives in a slum. Her father is a drunkard. And this girl washes the dishes, helps her mother wash dishes in 4 houses before she goes to school. And 2 years back, she designed something called a bottle turbine, which you can see on our website. You can see also her photograph. And the local newspaper put Durga's photograph. It's a very small, very innovative model, and made an appeal to the citizens of Pune to help her 517 checks worth 0.7 million rupees. A hell of a lot of money for this poor girl. And this was handed over to her by Professor Mashelkar, who is a fellow of the Royal Society, one of the great scientists in Pune. Now this money has been put in a fixed deposit, and so that Durga can complete her college education. So there are several good success stories. Girls who have done brilliantly, just given a chance, just given a break.
So, yeah, how do you feel when you hear about your students, who have learned science from the science toys and handmade toys that you make, and who have excelled and have attained their goals in their life in the field of engineering or in the field of sciences? How do you feel?
No, it is deeply fulfilling. It's absolutely wonderful. And I think that, I don't want to sound jingoistic or very patriotic. I think that our children deserve a chance. They need good mentoring, and that they're as bad or as good as anyone else in the world. So this is a chance which we need to give to many of our children who go to municipal schools or are in the village schools. They never get a chance. Given a chance, I think many of them will do good because they're as bright as anyone else in the world. This is what I sincerely believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, we'll get back to the toy making or the tinkering interest of yours. How nowadays, there are so many wide variety of toys in the market affordable to many of us, most of the people. I should say everyone. And which are maybe not every toy that is available teaches children some concept, but the toys are having a lot of show and glitz, which can be really attractive to the children. So how are people or the children receiving your handmade and simple toys?
Now, what we do is, I think, they've got a pumping response. These are not just toys. These are very well thought of, with a deep thought into them, simple science experiments. But in the end, children should have a lot of fun. And they should be able to, some of these. For instance, I'll just give you one instance that we have some 30 different kinds of pumps on our website. No one in the world makes so many pumps as we do. You can make a pump using a straw and a broomstick, and you can sprinkle water 15 feet across. You can make a pump using 2 film cans and a bit of cycle tube, and you can blow up a balloon and burst the balloon. You can pop the balloon. Mm-hmm. So we make 30 kinds of pumps, and we've got a slogan on our website that the best thing a child can do with a toy is to break it. Because why do children break toys? Because they want to pull them apart, and they want to see what is inside the tummy of the toy. That they are not satisfied until they rip it apart and put it back again. So good toy design must welcome children and, invite children, pull me apart, see what is inside and put me back again. And this is precisely what we try and do. Now, many of the toys in the market are quite black boxes. You press a button and something happens, and you don't have a clue as to what is happening inside. But most of our toys are 100% transparent. Children can pull them apart, take them apart, put them back again, like a mechano. And, for instance, give you one more example is that almost, 500 million bottles are chucked in the USA every day. And in India, we are learning the worst of the West.
Mm-hmm.
So about 3 years back, we started designing toys using old plastic bottles. Today, we have over 100 very serious and fascinating science experiments and toys which just use plastic bottles. Now, these are very low cost. They are very accessible to the poorest, and they help you understand the science concept much more deeply. And I think that's why we are the future. We are not the past.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here one of another listener has posted another question. So he says, so many people in India don't get food twice a day. So why is it important for kids to have toys? Is his question.
Well, I think all life is play. I think all life is play. There's no learning without play. And everyone was a born learner and born to play. And when these no commercial toys were available, people would make their own toys with whatever was available to them, materials, carve out a small toy and play with it. Because play is very serious business. If we don't play as children, well, we remain incomplete human beings. We are frustrated inside, and we go and kill others when we grow up, or go to war, or fight some other country in the name of patriotism. We do all these silly things because we have not played. So play is very, very important. It's a very serious business, and all life is play. Even as adults, if it's not play, if it's not fun, it's not learning. So play is very, very important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So on this note, I would like to ask you, what is your take on the Right to Play Act for India?
Well, I think we have the right to education, which has just been passed a couple of years back. But that every school must, even if it's a private school, they must take 25% children from the poor sections. And I think many activists who work for education, and they struggled very hard for many years and pressurized the government into passing the Right to Education bill. And it's a serious bill. It would help our children because all the elite schools, the rich schools, will have to reserve 25% of their seats for children who are disadvantaged, who are underprivileged, who come from a poor background. So it's a progressive bill in India's context, and I support it.
Well, with your toys, you are not only teaching us science but also a sustainable living. So very rarely you use plastic, or most of the time it will be a waste product which can be recyclable, or which maybe cannot be recyclable also, but it is majorly it will be a waste product, so it won't impact it does impact the sustainable movement. So do you think toys can also give momentum for the green movement?
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you that, as children going to school when they're young, we must imbue them with the green values, with the values of sustainability. Ask the parents to, small cartons, plastic boxes, things which are thrown away from the house, plastic bottles, old newspapers, magazines, they can send with the children to the school. Then school can put them in various cartons, one with plastic bottles, one with newspapers, one with, bottles, and etc., etc. And this should be the laboratory where children should be open to design things using this. There would be some working tools over there. And, this would be a great act. Children would learn how to clean up the earth. And at the same time, in the process of cleaning up, picking up bottles or Tetra Packs or other throwaway stuff and making absolutely delightful toys to play with and learn science with. I think it would be a great win-win situation for the children. On the one hand, you're trying to clean up the mess. At the same time, it's much better education, much better learning.
Very impressive. So, can you explain us about the Muktagan Vignan Shodhika?
Well, this was, our founder, as I said, Professor Jayan Narlikar. He wanted, as part of a research facility which offers a PhD, he wanted a children's science center. And 10 years back, his friend Pula Deshpande, he's an iconic figure in Maharashtra. He's the cultural icon of Maharashtra. He made a donation of 0.4 million rupees, 40 lakh rupees, 4 million rupees for a small building. He gave a personal donation. And I came there about 9 years back. And we have a small team, 3 more colleagues. So all 4 of us are funded. Our salaries come from the Tata Trust. They fund the small center. And I think the Tata Trust, because we do very good work, they hold us in very high esteem. And the Tata Trust has funded us for the last 8 years. And the funding is really small. My colleague, her name is Dr. Vidla Maiskar. She's a microbiologist. She was 4 years in Stanford as a postdoc student. And even today, she gets a very small amount of compensation. She gets about 22,000 rupees a month, which is less than $500. She gets as a take-home salary. So it's really small. But we all stick around despite low pay salary because we feel that we're doing something very meaningful. And this is the glue which binds us together.
Okay. So, are you the founder of this Muktagan Vignan Shodhika, and do you run this?
No, I'm not the founder, but I'm the coordinator. I'm the coordinator.
So, is it anywhere related to the Hoshangabad Science Teaching Program that you have?
I work in the Hoshangabad Science. Yes. I worked in the Hoshangabad Science Program 30 years back, and I was very inspired by that. And I still, the Hoshangabad Science Teaching Program was taken over by Eklavya later, who ran it for many years, but unfortunately 10 years back, the government of India shut that program. A very inspiring program. But there are, I'm one of the elements of the Hoshangabad Science team, old team, which continue doing this.
Some or the other way you are
so
teaching
there is actually
all of
a old link with the Hoshangabad Science. So continue. So there is actually a link with the Hoshangabad Science. There was a time when we worked in 1,500 government schools, and children learned science through a very novel method of actually doing experiments, hands-on science, learning by doing. Very, very exciting. And some of the best people in India participated in this program. Not because of money, but because they wanted to do something worthwhile. But 10 years back, the government of Madhya Pradesh, when this program had spread to 100,000 students in 1,500 schools, it just shut it down, and which is very sad. But it has continued in some other forms, like our small center is there, which the devices, fun experiments, make videos, make books. This is one part of it. The other part is Eklavya, which still exists and publishes some wonderful books in Hindi for children. And Hindi is a very, very major language. For instance, there is an American pedagogue, John Holt. His books, How Children Fail, How Children Learn, Learning All the Time. He wrote beautiful books on education. 4 of John Holt's books have been translated into Hindi and published by Eklavya. They translated Summerhill by A.S. Neil, This is an iconic book on education. It's a seminal contribution. They translated that into Hindi and published it. So they're doing very good work too.
Okay. So we are running out of time. So I have two more questions for you. From all these years of experience that you have of teaching and tinkering, what have you learned?
Well, I think one is that one thing which I've learned, I've had the privilege of working in 20 countries as a UNESCO advisor on science teaching, and I've been to about 2,500 schools in my own country. And I sincerely believe that India is it's a huge country with a very large educated middle class. And not only is there a challenge to teach our own children in India, but to help children, poor children in Africa, in other Asian countries, our neighborhood countries, and India must take a very proactive role in that. For last 6 years, we've been going to a workshop in South Africa. It's called the Sasol Science Fair. There are 600 international workshops there. And for 6 years running, we have won the most innovative workshop. And why do we go to South Africa? Because anyone who is interested in science in Africa comes down to Sasol in Grahamstown. And we have these DVDs which I mentioned, the Learner's Library. And we give them free. And now these DVDs are being duplicated and they're in every African country they're circulating. So I think this is our small task, to help our children and to help the poorest children in the world to learn science.
Okay, so you have authored numerous number of books, and you had so many publications with you. So, what is the actual number of books that you have authored, and which is the favorite among them for you?
Well, I think I've done about 20 books on science activities. One on Indian scientists. My last book was the story of solar energy. And this came right back after Fukushima, because we said that after Fukushima, India has so much of solar energy, so much of sun. We are sweating and sweltering all the time, and we do very little about it. So I did a graphic book. It's called as The Story of Solar Energy, which has come into 5 or 6 languages. But I think my first book, which is called as Semantic Models and Other Science Experiments, also remains a favorite for me, because this is the book which is others have come into 5 or 6 languages, but my first book was translated into 12 Indian languages, and this gives me a deep sense of pleasure.
That's awesome. So, what is your favorite toy? Like, you made a toy which is affordable for a blind student, which is similar to the Braille's machine, or with a very ground level cardboard and wool. And you made science and biology available and whatnot. Everything everything is available on your website and from your short films.
Yes.
But
the touching slate the touching slate is certainly it's called as a touching slate, where a wool sticks to Velcro. It's as simple as that. So you just need a wool dispenser, and you can write on a Velcro slate. And then children, visually impaired children, can actually feel it with the tips of the fingers and feel the art which they've drawn. And this has become quite popular. From a website, there was a teacher in Thailand, a teacher, Chachai, who made it for blind schools in his country, and this became so popular, he's got a corporate sponsorship to make the touching slate for all the blind children in Thailand. But my most favorite toy also remains a simple electric motor. You just need a battery, and it takes less than 10 minutes to make this motor running. And you see the gleam in the eyes of a child after a child has made the motor. It's absolutely enthralling for a child to be able to make a motor and get it running. And it's not expensive at all.
Yeah.
So that remains a very favorite toy with me.
Okay, so that's your favorite toy. Well, do you have patent for, do you have a patent for the toys you make, or I'm sure you might have not thought about it, but because you're working voluntarily and for free of cost, and you want to reach out the underprivileged and poor, but did you ever try for a patent for your toys, handmade toys?
No, never. No, we have never tried for a patent, and we'll never try for it. And we will also, ideologically, we will never patent any toy. When I die, all these toys will remain behind in the Creative Commons for the children of the world. This is a promise which is a oath I've taken, and this is a promise to the children of the world.
That's really amazing, and it shows your down-to-earth nature. So my last and final question, and absolutely this will be the last question for today's show. So is it the science which fascinates you the most, or teaching children?
Well, I think I've always felt that being with children, I have learned a great deal. Mm-hmm. Because children are the most, children always do things the other way. You tell them to go right, they will go left. You told them not to open a toy, they will rip it apart. So the children are the most disobedient people, and we need more civil disobedience, right? Mm-hmm. So every time I'm with children, they either show me some new toy or some old toy which I have made, and they have made some improvement on that. So every session with children is a deep learning experience for me. Mm-hmm. So I always feel that I have learned much more from the children than I've actually taught them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Dr. Gupta, do you have any advice or message for our listeners on NRSMI?
Well, I think the only piece of advice is that I think a happy childhood. I think if anyone who has had a happy childhood, then the other ups and downs of life you can take care of. So if a child doesn't like science, that's not the end of the world. I think more children must write poetry, they must write stories, do great literature, make paintings. So if you are not interested in science, it's not the end of the world at all. Mm-hmm. And, we must look at science also critically. You see scientists who make all these weapons of destruction. Mm-hmm. And so science is not a holy cow. I think more children must write poetry, write stories. And a happy childhood is all that we can give our children as parents. If they have a happy childhood, then the other ups and downs of life, they would negotiate much better. There would be a wellspring within to fall back on.
This is absolutely a very awesome and pleasant advice for all of us. Thanks for that. And Dr. Gupta, finally, I would like to say that we have an answer for the quotation that was there on your website by Oxfam. I would like to repeat the quotation and tell the answer. And somewhere there are engineers helping others fly faster than sound, but where are the engineers helping those who must live on the ground? So this was the quotation by Oxfam on his website, and the answer is absolutely clear that it is you, and we have the answer that it is you. It's the one and only person, you. And you can meet this person on his website, and you can maybe you can interact with him. So it's absolutely our pleasure to have you on our show today on NRSMI, and thanks a lot for your time. And the time just passed like talking with you, and it's really an amazing interview or the conversation I had with you today. And so listeners, that is it for today, and let us conclude our show with Dr. Arvind Gupta's quote, which is taken from his website, that the whole world is a garbage pit, collect some junk and make it a kit. So hope you got it, and that's it for today. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tejaswini.
Thank you, sir. Really, it's a pleasure talking with you.